One of the interesting things about the mid-90s is it was a real technological leap during that era. And my old fogey friends might complain about this, but if you think about it, we got a lot of stuff in this time that led us to where we are now. The DVD took us off those crappy VHS tapes. Video game systems made a major leap with the Sony PlayStation, Nintendo 64. People started getting their cell phones back when cell phones were cool and not irritating. We had even medical leaps, which I will get into here in a moment. So, internet, back when the internet was cool as well. So a lot of neat stuff. So let's jump into it. Let's start with Dolly the sheep. Dr. Ian Wilmot cloned the world's first sheep from adult cells called Dolly. This one's kind of interesting because this was major news and we were really going to see like innovation from this. Like, we're going to see extinct species coming back to life and all this other kind of stuff. And not a lot's happened. You can now take DNA from your pets and have it sent to labs, and they will get you a new pet from the same DNA that the one you had. So that's cool for pet lovers. But it didn't really advance as much as we thought it would. Some of it had to do with restrictions in the US that the government put on cloning and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of a neat thing. I'm going to mention another one called Sildenfall. I should have looked up how to pronounce that before I started recording this. It was patented in 1996, relevant to the year 1998. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about, and I'll get into that in 1998, so stay tuned. A lot of people don't like Bill Clinton. I'm a fan, and one of the reasons why is that the government was able to actually function when he was president versus now where they just fight with one another. They passed a welfare reform bill in August of that year, and what this did is it helped get people off welfare, which is something that we want. So it was really kind of a cool thing that the government did and reformed the system, and we can thank Clinton for that because he really pushed for it. We've talked about nuclear testing in the atolls in an episode of the podcast, and I want to mention in 1996, January of 1996, France, which was still testing nuclear weapons, and a focus of that episode that we had, stopped testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific Ocean. So that was nice. Benjamin Netanyahu was elected as prime minister at the end of May in 1996. Still around. See that guy in the news regularly. U.S. and Russia sent peacekeeping troops into Bosnia to maintain the peace. And sadly, Carl Sagan passed away December 20th, 1996. Brilliant and amazing person. Real quickly, I want to mention two technological advancements. I already mentioned them actually, but I'm going to call them out a bit more. Now, the DVD, of course, wasn't invented in 1996, but it was introduced to a wide audience. It was basically released in 1996 in the sense that you could go down to your local electronics store and start buying DVD players. They're quite expensive back then. Now, you can probably find one for pretty darn cheap if you can find one at all. The DVD is still around, not as much. Eventually switched to Blu-ray and stuff, but you can still get DVDs. And you can often find cheap DVDs at yard sales and stuff if you still have a DVD player to play them in. But this was great. The problem with VHS tapes is they would wear out. You'd lose the quality. If you remember VHS players, you'd had that little dial on the front because it would get static and you had to dial that in. You could put so much more on a DVD. You could put lots of fun bonus extras. They had the startup menus. And of course, you didn't have to rewind it every time. So it was great. And video game systems made major leaps in the mid-90s, like I said. And we had the Nintendo 64, known as the N64. It reached the North American audience in September of that year. This was the last major home console to use cartridges, We talked about this in our Nintendo 64 versus PlayStation episode, as Jamie was a fan of the N64. He had one, and it was quality equipment. As much as I made fun of it in that episode, it is great. And it had a great controller and kind of revolutionized the controller aspect of gaming. But it was a console system. The world was moving to discs with quality. However, it was the last really great console that came out at that point in time. Sports. I want to mention the NBA championship in 1996. Why am I mentioning that as a person who doesn't really care all that much about basketball? Well, because it involved Chicago and the Seattle Supersonics. Seattle doesn't have a basketball team anymore. The Sonics moved away. But it was kind of a thing because, well, Seattle in general isn't really known as a sports city, although I would say the Seahawks are pretty good. Let's not get into baseball or anything like that, but Seattle held their own against the Chicago Bulls. And Chicago's a powerhouse team. It's kind of always been a powerhouse team, right? I mean, it had Michael Jordan on it, and it was his return year, actually. He retired previously after having an HIV diagnosis, but he was able to actually keep himself in pretty decent shape and would come back and play for Chicago and played for the team that year against the Seattle Supersonics. Unfortunately for Seattle, my hometown, they did lose the series overall, losing 4-2, but props to Seattle for holding their own against the Bulls. 1996 was also an Olympics year, and it was held in the United States in Atlanta, Georgia that year. Medal-wise, the U.S. did pretty well, but the thing that I think is most worth mentioning is 1996 is they had the Centennial Olympic Park bombing. It happened on July 27th, and one of the guards had discovered a pipe bomb. Law enforcement arrived, they evacuated people, and the bomb did actually explode. One spectator was killed, and over 100 were wounded. Another person did have a heart attack because of it, but overall, the fact that that guard was able to find the bomb helped save a lot of lives that would have been injured. They eventually did catch the culprit, a guy by the name of Eric Rudolph. He was arrested in 2003. He also bombed some abortion clinics, gay nightclubs. According to the article on it, the purpose of the attack was to confound, anger, and embarrass the Washington government in the eyes of the world for its abominable sanctioning of abortion on demand. Yep, those anti-abortion people. He received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. You might have heard of a golfer by the name of Tiger Woods. I think he's reasonably well known. 20 years old in 1996, and he made his professional debut. Went on to win the PGA Tour. So you remember what you were doing when you were 20? Probably not winning PGA Tours. But hey, maybe you were still doing something amazing. I certainly wasn't. And yeah, Tiger Woods has been around ever since, still winning those trophies. Let's jump over to books. Game of Thrones, first novel in the Song of Fire and Ice series by George R.R. Martin. To this date, we haven't received the last book in the series, but hey, we got the first one in 1996. So the book is great. Like, I've read the whole series, and hopefully we'll get to read the final one. It's huge, tells the story from multiple points of views. You got the Starks, the Lannisters, the Targaryens. The book went on to win a bunch of awards, and of course, turned into a excellent series on HBO. If you ignore the final season, which I think a lot of people would prefer to do. The Green Mile came out as well. Stephen King, he writes a lot. 1996 tells the story of a death row supervisor who encounters a death row inmate with a magical healing ability. It was also turned into a movie starring Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. Speaking of books that were turned into movies, Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk. You know, I saw him do a reading once, actually, and he's great. I'm a huge fan of Palahniuk. He taught us very important lessons in life, such as you don't talk about Fight Club. You definitely don't talk about Fight Club. Did you know there's actually more rules? Another rule, when someone says stop or taps out or goes limp, the fight is over. Only two guys to a fight, one fight at a time. They fight without their shirts or shoes. The fight goes on as long as they have to. If this is your first night of the fight, you have to fight. I'm glad I'm not in a fight club. I'm too pretty for it. Chuck mentioned once, because they turned that into a movie, and he actually liked the way they introduced the characters in the movie better than how he did it in the book. I've read a bunch of his books, and he's fantastic. Love the guy. You want to talk about music? Ozfest, founded by Sharon Osbourne and her husband, Ozzy Osbourne. Heavy metal and rock music. Started in 1996, went on till 2018. They don't do it anymore. This was not actually a national tour initially. It was actually just a 2-day festival that was held in Phoenix and Devore, California on the 26th and 27th of 1996 in October. If I remember correctly, because I don't have it in my notes here, but I'm pretty sure when I was reading up on this, the reason they started it is because they actually wanted to play in Lollapalooza, or Ozzy Osbourne did, and Lollapalooza was like, oh no, he's too old and rocky and stuff for us. And so Sharon Osbourne was said like, well, screw you guys, we'll start our own festival. And they did, and it went on for quite a long time. Gangsta rapper Tupac Shakur was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting. 6 days later, he died. He was only 25 years old. The assailant, unidentified. An album was released, double length, greatest hits, one of only 9 hip-hop albums to have been certified diamond in the United States. So I'm not really into like gangster rap. It's not my thing. But this was still pretty big news for the people that follow it and are fans of the music. He had a rival by the name of Notorious B.I.G., who they thought was the suspect or somehow related in the shooting. But he was also actually murdered 6 months later in March 1997 while in Los Angeles. So both men are rapping it wherever rappers go after they die. Looking at the top 100 of 1996, a lot of stuff I didn't really listen to. I guess I was just not cool enough. The Macarena by Los Del Rio. You'll still hear this played at weddings and other events, and people, of course, dance along to it because they're like, oh yeah, remember this? Hip, hip, hop, hop. I didn't much care for it, but yeah, that was the #1 single in 1996. Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men, One Sweet Day. Celine Dion, Because You Loved Me. The Tony Rich Project, Nobody Knows. Nobody knows that song. How was that in the top 4? I don't even remember that one. Mariah Carey, Tracy Chapman. A lot of top. I mean, we're looking at the top 100, of course. So, like I said, a lot of stuff I don't listen to. Keith Sweat was at number 10. Country music singer. Alanis Morissette, number 13 at Ironic. Let's jump over to movies. The #1 film of 1996, Independence Day. I loved Independence Day. They made a sequel, which unfortunately wasn't that great many, many years later. But I think Independence Day was one of those films that really kicked off that big budget action films that must destroy historic sites, right? We've seen this in basically every Marvel film and a lot of the big budget ones, the asteroids attacking the Earth kind of stuff. And Independence Day, they destroyed the White House. They destroyed all the sites. And it was great. I love that film. Stars Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, Judd Hurst. A lot of great people in that film. A fantastic performance, in my opinion, by Brent Spiner as the doctor in there. And yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's super fun ridiculous. And come on, that speech that Bill Pullman gives about Independence Day, that's great, right? Another movie that was quite popular that year, Joel and Ethan Coen gave us Fargo. I, again, loved Fargo. I remember watching this with a friend of mine, and of course we had to start doing the accent. Oh, you betcha, eh? Yeah, I'm gonna go talk like we're from North Dakota, even though we don't really do the accent right. Starred Frances McDormand, Steve Buscemi, William H. Macy, and anyone watching that film will never look at a wood chipper the same way ever again. So it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. It won 2. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Writing. It won for Best Actress for Frances McDermott and Best Writing. I mean, come on. That film is so quotable. It has to get a Best Writing award. Twister, another crazy action flick that they just recently did a sequel to or reboot of. I don't know. I haven't seen it. It made only about half as much as Independence Day. That's how big Independence Day was. That was another fun one. And, you see a cow flying across the screen. Moo. You got to love it. Mission Impossible, the first one. Yeah, that's been going on since 1996, and they're still making them. The Rock, which you could argue is a sequel to a James Bond film. People do that. I think it's great. It's one of Sean Connery's finest performances. And, of course, you've got Nicolas Cage as a standout performance as well. What's cool about this movie is it was made by Michael Bay. And now you see a Michael Bay film, and it's just this over-the-top, ridiculous, lens flary, slow motion crap. But back then, he actually made good films. I think maybe it was budget-wise, and he was just being restrained a little bit. Who knows? But yeah, he actually did make good films at one point in time. And this is another one that received a few Oscar nominations. And by few, I mean one for Best Sound. Show Me the Money! Jerry Maguire came out, was number 9 on the highest grossing films that year. So Tom Cruise, 2 films in the top 10. And he's been making top films ever since. Looking at the top rated series from 1996, ER, top of the list, came out a few years prior. I mentioned it, went on for a very long time, and dominated for a while. Seinfeld, again, I've talked about, and it continued to dominate the list as well. Friends tied at number 4 with The Naked Truth. I don't remember The Naked Truth. What the heck was that? The Naked Truth. Tia Leone divorces her rich, philandering husband, Leland Banks, asking for nothing in the settlement except the use of her maiden name. I do not remember this show at all. And it's interesting that it was number 4, considering that it only ran for a couple of years. All right, whatever. Some show I don't remember at all. Friends, of course, show we all remember. Home Improvement, that was big back then. 60 Minutes dropped out of the top 10, but hey, still around. Frasier and Spin City. I've been rewatching Spin City, actually, from the beginning. I don't know if it holds up as well, but it's still kind of a cheesy, fun show to watch. A couple shows that debuted in 1996. The Daily Show. Remember The Daily Show? Do you watch The Daily Show? Do you still watch The Daily Show? Yeah, it premiered in 1996. And it has been entertaining and educating audiences ever since. Murder, She Wrote, the long-running series starring Angela Lansbury, finally ended. Yeah, that was I never really got into it, probably because I wasn't really old enough at the time. Jamie, I think, has mentioned in a past episode that he's rewatching it now or watching it now and likes it because, well, he's older than his actual years. But he likes it. I don't know if I would like it. They just rebooted it, I think. No, they rebooted Matlock. But they probably rebooted Murder, She Wrote as well, since they reboot everything. But yeah, the show went on for a really long time. A lot of people love it. And maybe I'll go check it out again. Maybe I'll give it a second watch now that I'm a bit older and can appreciate it. Another series that debuted, Third Rock from the Sun, starring John Lithgow, Jane Curtis, and Kristen Johnson, and that guy with the annoying voice, French Stewart. A lot of people really like this series. I have to be honest, I'm not a fan. I just thought it was stupid, right? This is one of those series that had these aliens are smart enough to get to another planet, but they're not smart enough to integrate. But I guess, you need the comedy somehow. It went on from 1996 to 2001. So a lot of people really like it or liked it. I don't know. Do people still like it? It's not one of those shows you hear a lot about now, like Friends or Seinfeld, for example. It did win quite a few awards during its run, multiple primetime Emmys. John Lithgow won, the show won. I'm not going to go in. You can look it up on IMDb if you want. It also won some Golden Globe Awards. So, really popular show at the time. Again, but the thing is, like, here's the thing. I'm not really a fan of sitcoms where everybody's stupid. And that's kind of what this is. I get that they're smart, right? Like John Lithgow, he becomes a teacher in the series or whatever. But, but he also acts like a moron, right? And it doesn't work for me. If it works for you, not faulting you, have power to watch whatever you want. And I don't want to get into one of those arguments of like just because I don't like something, everybody else shouldn't like it. And just because I do like something, everybody else should like it, kind of a thing. We all have our own opinions on stuff. My opinion of Third Rock from the Sun is that it's not funny. Well, am I done already? Okay. Yeah, looks like I've reached the end of 1996. It was a great year in 1996. A lot of cool stuff happened in 1996, a lot of great books. Seattle went to the playoffs. Yeah. And we got a lot of cool tech and a lot of great movies. And TV was out around that time. So pop culture-wise, 1996 rocked. This is where I end the show by saying like, subscribe, share, comment, all that kind of stuff. And with that, I am out of here to go watch myself some Murder, She Wrote and see if I'm now old enough to appreciate that show.